Hey guys, it's Karenology. This one is pure chaos. You have to hear how it all went down. I heard the crunch of boots on pine needles before I saw her. Middle of nowhere. Just me, my tent, and the hiss of fire licking up from a ring of stones. I was halfway into my first beer. The kind of silence you don't get anywhere anymore. When her voice cut through it like a rusted saw. "Excuse me, are you authorized to be here?" I looked up. She had that face. You know the one. Short blonde curls shellacked into a helmet. Sunglasses like bug eyes. Floral blouse, 2 sizes too small. Clipboard in hand like it was a weapon. Karen. I didn't know her name yet, but I knew her type. I stayed seated. "I own this land. You might want to check your map," she huffed. "This entire area is under the jurisdiction of the Lakeside Homeowner Association. Camping here is strictly prohibited." "Lady," I said, reaching into my duffel for the D copy. I kept just in case. "I've been coming here since before your HOA existed. My father built that dock over there in 1964. She stepped back like I'd thrown something at her. "You can't just say that and expect me to believe it." "I'm calling the sheriff." And she did. 2 deputies showed up 20 minutes later. Blue lights dancing through the trees. They walked slow, one hand on the belt, the other waving at me to stand. I did. Told them the story. Showed the paper. The older one squinted at it, then at Karen, then at the fire. "He's got the deed, ma'am. This land isn't part of the HOA's registry." Karen's mouth twitched. "Well, maybe it should be." They left. She didn't. She lingered a while, muttering about bylaws and uniformity, then finally turned and stormed off down the trail in a fury of perfume and polyester. You'd think that'd be the end of it, but you'd be wrong. The next morning, I woke to the clack of plastic fencing being unrolled. Orange mesh, like the kind they use on roadside ditches. 2 guys in reflective vests were hammering stakes along the tree line. My tree line. Hey, what the hell do you think you're doing?" The taller one turned, shrugging. "Orders from the HOA. Said this land's being converted into a community picnic area." I stared. "This isn't their land. It's mine." He pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "Map says otherwise. You'll need to take it up with them." I walked to the edge of my camp, heart pounding. Beyond the trees, I saw more HOA volunteers dragging coolers, setting up folding chairs, like they were preparing for a damn festival. Kids running around, adults laughing like they owned the place. I tried calling the county office, but got nothing. Holiday weekend. I tried my nephew Trevor. He's a lawyer in Austin. But he didn't pick up. By noon, music was blasting. By 2, someone parked a golf cart in front of my tent. They acted like I wasn't even there. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched shadows dance on the nylon of my tent, listened to the crackle of fires from their side, smelled their food. I felt like a ghost on my own land, and somewhere deep down, something snapped. Not anger, not fear, just that quiet, cold certainty. They'd picked the wrong man to push. By morning, my fire pit was gone. Someone had scattered the stones, dumped water on the ashes, and left a neatly laminated sign where it used to be. No open flames. Community Regulation 4. 12. I stood over it, barefoot in the dew, and felt that old familiar burn in my chest. the kind I hadn't felt since my discharge. I tried Trevor again. This time he answered. His voice was sleepy, annoyed. Uncle John, it's Saturday. Can this wait? They're taking my land, Trev. Not slowly, openly. They put up a fence. They erased my fire pit. They think this is part of their HOA picnic area. He sighed. You still have the deed? Of course I do. Shall then file a complaint. It'll go through the assessor's office. It's closed until Tuesday. Then wait. They're not going to bulldoze anything over a weekend. Just let it lie. Let it lie. I hung up without saying goodbye. Walked the line of that orange mesh fence. Watched as the HOA folks set up a volleyball net half in the lake. Watched as Karen directed traffic like a damn general. She caught my eye and smirked. She wasn't bluffing. She was escalating. They treated my shore like public space. Left garbage bags stacked like sculptures. Someone dumped beer bottles in the old tackle box my father gave me. I didn't stop them. I just sat in my folding chair. Boots planted, watching every move. On Sunday morning, the bomb dropped. I was boiling coffee over a camp stove when 2 HOA security officers showed up. Not cops. Private guys. Uniforms too tight. Sunglasses too shiny. Sir, the stockier one said, we're asking you to vacate the premises. You're disrupting scheduled community activity. This is private land, mine. He handed me a letter. Printed, official looking, full of fluff about easements and public easement overlay authority, referencing some obscure zoning clause I'd never heard of. So this isn't legal. You can contest it on Tuesday with the county. Until then, we're under directive to enforce the board's decision. I looked past him to the lake. They were setting up fireworks. Big ones. Launch tubes. Caution tape. A sign read, Lakeside HOA presents Founders Weekend Celebration. I turned back to the guards. You light those things on my land, and I swear... Sir, please lower your voice. They didn't arrest me. They didn't need to. I got the message I wasn't welcome on my own dirt. That night, I slept in my truck with the doors locked. I watched fireworks burst over the lake. Watch kids scream with laughter. Watch Karen take photos with her little dog in her arms, waving to the crowd like a damn politician. I didn't cry. I just stared. That cold certainty from before, it wasn't cold anymore. It was molten. And it needed a direction. I drove out before dawn. Hit the gas station, grabbed coffee, stared at the sunrise over a row of pine silhouettes. I thought about my dad. How he'd built this dock with his own hands, stone by stone, plank by plank. How he'd taught me to fish right off that edge. How he told me, this land's ours, because we don't treat it like property. We treat it like legacy. Then I remembered something else. My dad used to keep every single property document. He said, you never know when someone will try to take what's yours by pretending it never was. Back at the house, I climbed into the attic, pulled down dusty boxes, letters, receipts, and then there it was, a topo map from 1981, hand-sketched by a county surveyor, with annotations in my dad's handwriting, and stapled to it, a signed agreement, notarized, detailing the boundary lines in graphic terms. Coordinates, landmarks, proof, but I needed more. So, I dug through another box and found what I'd almost forgotten I had. A drone. Old, scratched, battery barely holding charge. But the camera worked. And suddenly, so did my memory. I knew exactly what I had to do. I packed the truck with my gear, the deed, the map, and the drone. Drove back to the lake. No one was there yet. Monday morning. Quiet. Perfect. I sent the drone up. High. Then low. Then real close to that stupid gazebo they'd built half into my tree line. And when I panned the camera just right, I saw something I wasn't expecting. A hidden trail. Worn down, leading from their parking lot into my woods. A hose, partially buried, running along the path. And beyond that, a locked electrical box, bolted to a pine tree. My pine tree. They weren't just trespassing. They were stealing. Water, power, land, and now I had them on tape. I smiled. Not because I had proof, but because I finally had a target. Let it lie, huh, Trevor? Not a damn chance. Tuesday morning hit like a hammer. I was parked outside the county recorder's office at 7:45 sharp. Hot coffee burning my tongue. Map and deed spread across the passenger seat. The second the doors opened, I was inside. The clerk, young, polite, and clearly used to retirees with land complaints, listened as I laid out everything. Deed, boundary map, drone footage, even a printed still of the hose snaking into my woods. She nodded, took copies, gave me a form, and said, "We'll process this and notify the HOA through official channels." How long? I asked. Could be a few weeks. Maybe more. I stared. A few weeks? They're throwing parties on my land. They vandalized my property. I've got trespass, theft, and illegal construction. And you want me to sit on my hands for a few weeks? She looked genuinely sorry. I'm just the clerk, sir. Back at the lake, things had grown. Karen had installed actual signage. Lakeside HOA Community Park. Members only. Right in front of my dock. Right over the rock where I carved my initials as a boy. Worse, they'd set up motion lights. One clicked on the second I stepped near my own tree line, flooding me in white like a prison break. A dog started barking in the distance. Then a voice. "You again? You're not supposed to be here today." Karen. She emerged from the path in a tennis visor and jogging suit, holding that damn clipboard like it gave her divine authority. You're trespassing," I said flatly. She laughed. "John, dear, we've already filed with the county. We have paperwork, too. This area's been under community care for years. Just because you've got a dusty map and some blurry video doesn't mean..." "It's a notarized boundary agreement." She stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "Then file a lawsuit. Otherwise, move your truck. It's blocking member access." I should have walked away. Instead, I yanked the sign out of the dirt and snapped it in half. She gasped, like I'd hit her. "That's destruction of community property." "No," I said. "That's destruction of a lie." By that evening, the sheriff's office called. A deputy, same one from before, said, "We got a complaint of threats and vandalism from the HOA. You might want to cool off." So, I'm the victim here. Doesn't always look that way from the outside. Click. They were building a narrative. Karen was playing the long game. Paint me unstable, dangerous, an old man with anger issues, all while they built their little empire on my back. I sat in my truck and thought. Thought about Trevor's voice, distant and disinterested. About Dad's hands, thick with callus, building this place to last generations. About the dock, now a place for HOA kids to cannonball off, while their parents sipped boxed wine on my lawn chairs. Then it hit me, the power box. I drove back home, raided the shed, and grabbed my bolt cutters. And then I waited. Watched the light fade. Watched Karen and her volunteers pack up their chairs, laugh their way back to their SUVs, unaware. At midnight, I crept back. The hose and the power line ran together down that hidden trail. I followed them in the dark, the drone's night vision footage replaying in my mind. When I reached the junction, I found the box. Locked, humming faintly. It was mounted to my tree. My property. I didn't hesitate. One cut, then another. The lights at the gazebo flickered, then died. Silence. Total, clean, silent darkness. I stood there for a while, breathing. Not triumphant, just even. But I knew this wouldn't be enough. Next morning, I called an old friend. Bill Haney. Used to work insurance audits. Not the boring kind. The kind where towns get sued over stupid municipal decisions. Bill? I said. I've got a situation that smells like $1 million liability. You up for a little drive? He laughed. Depends. You paying in beer or stories? Both. By Thursday, he was standing at the edge of my dock, sunglasses glinting, arms crossed. I'll be damned, he said. You weren't exaggerating. He pulled out a laser rangefinder, walked the line, traced the coordinates from the old survey. Then he stood in the middle of the HOA gazebo and tapped the floor with his boot. John, he said, this isn't just trespassing. This is structural encroachment. And if that thing collapses, that's insurance fraud, liability risk, and possible revocation of their entire coverage. I smiled. Shows, not because we had them, but because now I knew exactly how to make them break first. Friday rolled in with a storm front. Dark clouds coiling low over the lake like a warning. Bill stood on my porch, sipping instant coffee like it was aged bourbon. His boots were muddy, his windbreaker flapping in gusts that made the pine trees moan. It's gonna be a hell of a weekend, he muttered. You sure you're ready for this? I looked out at the lake. The gazebo stood empty now, lights still dead from the cut I made. But the signs were back up, new ones printed in color, laminated, bolted to posts this time. HOA property, no trespassing. On my damn soil, I nodded. Ready as I'll ever be. We met the inspector from the insurance company that afternoon. Bill had called in a favor, said he was investigating a potential liability exposure regarding unpermitted HOA structures. The man who stepped out of the SUV was sharp. Creased slacks, clean clipboard, silver badge on his belt. Name's Barrett. I don't like being lied to, and I don't like paying out fraud, he said. You show me something actionable, I file the report. That's it. Bill handed him the map, the drone footage, the deed, and a printed email chain where Karen had mentioned to HOA members that some unused land had been reclaimed for community enjoyment. That line, right there, that was gold. Barrett spent an hour pacing the site, took photos, made calls, measured the distance from the property line to the gazebo, tapped the pine tree with the power box. "Someone's going to sweat," he said finally. "Might not be fast, but the ball's rolling." Karen didn't know yet. And that was the best part. I had time. Until I didn't. Saturday morning, I came back from town with groceries to find my camp destroyed. Tent slashed. Coolers dumped. My chair floating in the shallows. And on the dock, spray painted in red, 2 words. "Get out." Bill whistled low through his teeth. "They're panicking." I crouched at the edge of the dock, ran a hand over the old wood. The same dock my father built when I was 12. Same one we fished off that summer Mom got sick. He'd held my shoulder and said, "We don't run, son. We fix. We hold." Now it was marked like some gangland alley. I drove straight to Trevor's office in Austin. Stormed in unannounced, dripping rainwater onto his polished floor. He looked up from his desk. Surprised, then annoyed. "Uncle John, you can't just barge in." "Save it. They vandalized the dock. Cut up my gear. I've got evidence, witnesses, a damn insurance agent backing me up. And I need you to stop acting like this is a nuisance." He leaned back, sighing. Okay, calm down. Sit." I didn't. "Listen," he said. "I can draft a cease and desist. We can push for a temporary injunction. But we need to make sure your paperwork is bulletproof. If they counterclaim, they're using my land as a power hub, Trevor. A water line runs straight from their lot into mine. That's utility theft." He blinked. That got through. "I'll call in a favor," he said finally. "But no promises. These HOA folks, they play dirty." Good," I said. "So do I." Back at the lake, I made camp again. Not a tent this time. A cot in the truck bed, a cooler bolted to the chassis, a steel thermos, and a shotgun, just in case. That night, the rain started in sheets. Wind howled through the trees. But I didn't leave. I sat in the cab, listening, waiting, and then I saw them, 2 figures, hooded, darting through the woods. Flashlights cutting between trees. One stopped at the gazebo. The other headed for the dock. I slipped out, boots sinking in the mud, and circled wide. The man at the dock was holding a jug, not water. Something sloshed too thick. He bent down to pour it across the planks. What the hell do you think you're doing?" I barked. He froze. The other ran. The one at the dock turned, and I recognized him. Doug, HOE board member. Friendly face at the bar once. Used to joke about bylaws, like they were harmless. He stammered, It's just weed killer. They said the dock was unsafe. Liability. Don't move," I growled. "Police are on the way." They weren't. But he didn't know that. He dropped the jug and took off into the woods. Next morning, I found the spot where the second guy had been. Footprints. Trampled brush. And, half buried in the mud, a plastic bag. Inside, a printed HOA plan proposal. At the top, Phase 3 expansion, lakeside event pavilion. Projected site right on top of my dock. They weren't improvising. They were executing a plan. But now, I had the proof they never meant me to see. And it was time to bring the storm to them. The bag I found in the mud changed everything. Until then, I thought they were just arrogant, entitled suburban invaders, pretending my family land was theirs. But this was architectural blueprints, HOA logos, signatures. They weren't winging it. They were building an empire. And I was the first domino they needed to push. Monday morning, I drove into town with that folder seatbelted in like a newborn. Bill met me at the diner with his laptop and a stack of legal pads. "Expansion proposal?" he asked, flipping through the soaked papers. "They're planning to build a full-scale event space here," I pointed at the printed map, "right where the dock sits, with lake access, power routing, and a parking lot that runs straight through my woods." He let out a low whistle. "They're planning all this on paper they don't even own. That's bold." I leaned in. "That's fraud." He looked at me, long, measured. "You ready to go nuclear? You have no idea." Trevor was waiting on speaker when we got back to the house. His voice was sharper now, controlled urgency. "Uncle John, I spoke with a property litigator this morning. He agrees. What they're doing isn't just civil trespass. It's fraudulent land use planning. If we can prove the board knew the land wasn't theirs, that's grounds for a restraining order and possibly criminal charges." I slid the proposal across the table to Bill. "Think this proves it?" Bill smiled. "I think it buries them." We worked through the night. Bill drafted a preliminary report with photographs, GPS tags from the drone, and screenshots from the HOA's own public newsletters bragging about reclaimed green space. Trevor filed a preliminary motion first thing Tuesday, and then we played our card. Barrett, the insurance investigator, agreed to present the situation to the HOA's underwriter. Not directly, indirectly, a quiet call, a concerned question, a hint that someone might be building on unpermitted land with stolen utilities. No accusations, just curiosity. By Wednesday, Karen was sweating. I saw her that morning, standing at the gazebo, phone clamped to her ear, pacing like a cornered animal. She wasn't in her usual breezy outfit. She was dressed like someone going to court, and her smile was gone. Later that afternoon, the signs came down. The motion lights disappeared. The orange mesh fencing was rolled up and carted away. Quietly. No announcements. No apologies. Bill sat beside me on the tailgate of my truck, watching it happen. "They're retreating." I shook my head. "They're regrouping." Sure enough, that night I got an email from the HOA, a formal notice. Per homeowner. Association mediation guidelines. We request an immediate in-person meeting with the property stakeholder, John Shepard, to discuss use rights, land classification, and future compatibility. Translation. They wanted to settle, to talk, to spin it before the legal wave hit. Bill said, "Ignore it. They're scared." But I didn't want silence. I wanted something else. I responded with a date and time. Thursday, at the dock, on my land. I wore my father's denim jacket, the one with the stitched initials over the heart, brought a thermos of black coffee and a lawn chair, and I waited. Karen showed up 10 minutes late, flanked by 2 board members. Doug among them, looking like a whipped dog. She had her clipboard, her fake pearls, but she didn't have control anymore. "I believe we can find a mutually beneficial," she started. "Save it," I cut in. "I know about the proposal. I know about the hose, the power box, the motion lights. I know you're losing insurance coverage because of what you built on land that's not yours." Her jaw clenched. We were acting under assumed expansion rights. Astan assumed nothing. You knew and you didn't care. But now the county does. And the underwriter. And my lawyer. And if you want this to end quietly, you're going to do exactly what I say. Doug spoke up, voice shaky. What do you want? I stood. Walked to the dock. Tapped my boot on the wood. This dock stays. This land is mine. You remove every structure, every nail, every post that crosses my boundary. You cease all activity within 50 feet of my tree line. And you issue a signed acknowledgement that Lakeside HOA improperly used this property without permission to be filed with the county. Karen laughed. A brittle, humorless thing. You're not getting a confession. I leaned in. Then I'll see you in court. And in every paper. Between here and Houston. Silence. Doug looked at her, then nodded. I'll draft it, he said quietly. Karen didn't speak. She just turned and left. I watched them walk away. The wind picked up off the lake. Cold, clean. Bill came up beside me. You think she'll fight it? I nodded. Absolutely. But not out loud, because I hadn't won yet. I'd only opened the door to the final act. The draft came through that evening. One-page acknowledgement, filled with passive language and carefully selected phrasing. Miscommunication regarding boundaries. Temporary encroachment. Reclassification under review. No apology. No ownership. Just enough to keep their hands clean if this ever made it to court. Bill skimmed it, chuckled once. They're trying to put the fire out with fog. But Trevor read it twice and said, if we file this with the county, it goes on public record. That's pressure. I signed. The next week, the retreat began in full. The gazebo vanished first, dismantled in a single day by grim-faced volunteers who didn't look me in the eye. The motion lights came down, the signs disappeared, the orange fence rolled up like it had never existed. Every post, every trash bin, every fake HOA improvement was gone by Thursday. Locals noticed. Cars slowed on the gravel road. A few waved. A couple nodded. One old man in a green pickup gave me a thumbs up without stopping. Even Doug came by, alone. No clipboard. Just a man in a flannel shirt who looked tired. I didn't know how far it went, he said. They kept it between a few board members. I didn't say much. Just offered him coffee. He took it like it cost him something. It felt like the war was over. But I should have known better. The ambush came Friday night. I was sleeping in the truck again. Engine off. Windows cracked. The air was still and wet. Cicadas humming so loud it almost sounded electric. Then, lights, headlights, multiple engines, voices. I grabbed the shotgun but didn't open the door. Just watched. 3 trucks, HOA board members, and a few of their diehards. They moved fast, like they had a plan. One carried a roll of "Do Not Enter" tape. Another had a megaphone. Karen wasn't there, but this had her fingerprints all over it. They set up barriers, not fencing. Metal crowd control barricades, dragged in from God knows where. They lined the edge of the lake, forming a fake perimeter. Then came the projection screen. I kid you not. They erected a portable movie screen on the lawn. Speakers, extension cords. They were throwing a damn outdoor movie night. On my land, again. I stepped out. The guy with the megaphone turned. This area is under temporary community event use. Please remain in your vehicle or return to the neighborhood. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I walked straight to the power cord and yanked it. Hard. Sparks flew. The screen flickered, then died. One of the men yelled, "That's assault on property!" I turned. "This isn't your property. It's mine. And I have the county filing to prove it." He advanced, fists clenched. "We're reinstating usage rights under neighborhood vote." "Funny," I said, "because the insurance company says if even one toe crosses my boundary again, they pull your entire liability coverage." Silence. Then someone shoved me. Not hard. Just enough to say, "We're not done." I didn't push back. I didn't scream. I just stood there, and then Bill stepped out of the trees. I didn't even know he was there. Got the whole thing," he said, holding up his phone. "From the trucks rolling in to your boy here, putting hands on a veteran." The man backed off. Doug arrived 20 minutes later. Out of breath, furious, he tore down the barricades himself. This wasn't authorized," he said. Karen went rogue. Again, he walked up to me, handed me an envelope. Her resignation. Effective immediately. You won. E-N-T, but it didn't feel like winning. Not yet, because I knew people like Karen. Resignation wasn't retreat. It was camouflage. I sat on the dock that night, boots dangling over the water, moon high and sharp above the tree line. I listened to the silence. Real silence. But I didn't sleep. Something still felt off. The next morning, I found out why. I drove into town for supplies. And there, on the bulletin board outside the grocery store, was a flyer. Lakeside Community Independence Celebration, hosted by the new Lakeside Trust. A new logo, a new name, same lake, same date, and printed in bold across the bottom. And now, featuring private lake access and waterfront dining pavilion. They didn't lose. They evolved. And the war wasn't over. Not by a long shot. By the time I got back to the lake, the fire in my gut was burning hotter than ever. The new Lakeside Trust. Slick name. They didn't even bother hiding the continuity. Same fonts, same color scheme, same board members, just rebranded like some bankrupt corporation trying to rinse off the stink. Bill was waiting at the dock, drinking gas station coffee and flipping through a manila envelope. He looked up and raised an eyebrow. I take it you saw the flyer." They're not just coming back," I said. "They're doubling down." He nodded. "New filings at the county clerk. Karen's not on paper anymore, but guess who signed the trust documents?" "Sigh." He slid the form over. There it was. Her husband's name. Different address. Different entity, but same damn intent. They're trying to sidestep liability," he said. "If the HOA's burned, start fresh. Start private. No board elections, no bylaws. Just a trust with self-appointed managers. More power, less oversight. They want to own the lake." "No," he said. "They want to control it. Owning's just a perk." I stood there a while, staring out at the water. The breeze was clean, cool. Ducks floated near the reeds like nothing had changed, but I had. Enough of defense. Time to go offensive. I drove back to the house and pulled out a dusty toolbox from the shed. Inside, an old wildlife camera, some markers, a laminated sign I made years ago that read, "Private property. Federal land easement in effect." Not entirely true, but not entirely false either. There had been a survey in the 80s that listed part of my land as under a temporary conservation easement, and just like Karen bent truth into power, I could do the same. The next 2 days were a blur. I installed the camera along the trail that led from their parking lot into my woods. Set it low. Hidden. Wired to a motion trigger and an old hard drive. Then I made signs. A lot of signs. Not just warnings, statements, legal sounding, official looking, laminated and zip tied to trees. Federal easement, no unauthorized entry. Land survey pending. Any alterations may constitute a federal offense. Private watershed, Department of Environmental Oversight, all technically unverifiable. All terrifying enough for bureaucrats to back off. Bill laughed when he saw them. You're not lying. You're misdirecting. Exactly. By Wednesday, activity slowed. A couple of their people showed up to scout. One took photos of my signs, then left without stepping over the line. I waited. Years in East Yarst. Then, late Thursday night, I got what I needed. The camera caught a man in a hoodie, mid-40s, paunch, flashlight, digging a trench. Not just anywhere. Right through the tree line. Right into my land. At the end of the trench, a capped pipe. Big enough for drainage. Probably a runoff system for their future pavilion. They were trying to install infrastructure under cover of darkness. Bill said, "That's your trigger." Trevor agreed. They're committing active land modification. That's no longer just trespassing. That's civil engineering without permits. I didn't go to the cops. I didn't call the county. I went to the Department of Environmental Quality. See, the thing about Texas land, if you start modifying terrain, digging, draining, building within proximity to any classified water feature, you trip over a web of environmental red tape. And lucky me, that old conservation easement from the 80s, it came with a clause, one that said any construction in that area required a review. I faxed everything. The video, the trench, the pipe, the signs, and then I waited. Less than 48 hours later, a white SUV pulled up, with state plates and a seal on the side. A woman in boots and a green jacket stepped out. Clipboard. Laser rangefinder. GPS unit. And John Shepard? Yes, ma'am. I'm here to investigate unauthorized earthwork within a protected buffer zone. She walked the trench, took notes, took pictures, collected a soil sample. When she came back, her face was unreadable. Was this pipe installed by you? No. Was it on your land? Yes. Asti. Then whoever did it, she said, just bought themselves a $25,000 headache. I watched her drive off. Calm, quiet, no spectacle. But the fuse had been lit, and I knew damn well where that fire was going to burn next. By Saturday morning, the lake was silent again. But it wasn't peace. It was tension. That thick, expectant kind. Like the air before a storm. I sat on the tailgate with my coffee, watching a heron glide low across the water, and knew it wouldn't be long. Bill called at noon. I just heard from a friend at the environmental office. That pipe? It triggered a mandatory review of the entire Lakeside Trust Development Zone. They're frozen. No permits, no construction, full audit. I didn't speak for a moment. Just stared at the trees. The wind barely moved the branches. They're not going to go quietly, are they? No, he said. But they can't go forward either. Not until the audit clears. And with your footage and the old easement clause, That'll take months. That afternoon, I took a slow walk along the boundary. The fake signs I'd posted were weathered now, but still hanging. I left them. Not because I needed the bluff, but because they reminded me of the moment I stopped backing down. At the old campsite, the grass was growing back where their chairs had dug into the soil. The fire pit was still gone, but I wasn't angry anymore. Not about that. I heard a car door slam. Turned. Doug. He looked rough, pale, wrinkled shirt, like he hadn't slept in days. I thought we were done, I said. He held up both hands. Not here to fight, I just needed to talk to someone who wasn't a lawyer. I didn't answer, just stood there. Doug stepped forward. Karen's furious, not even pretending anymore. Says she's being persecuted. That you manipulated the law. She tried to steal land. I know. He looked around. She's pushing to sue the environmental agency. Claims you faked the pipe install. I let out a laugh. Not bitter. Just tired. She won't win. No. But she'll drag it out. And now she's talking about media. Damage control. I narrowed my eyes. She wants to make me the villain. Doug looked ashamed. Already started. Flyers around town. Anonymous posts online. She's spinning the story. Lonely old man harasses community, blocks park development, endangers kids. I felt the blood rise. He held up a paper. She's using this. It was a photo. Me, stepping out of the truck, holding the shotgun. From that night, from the standoff, taken from the trees. She's got people watching me. Doug didn't answer. I stood still for a long moment. Then I took the paper, folded it once, and shoved it in my jacket. You tell Karen, I said. She's welcome to try. But every word she prints, every lie she tells, I'll answer it with something she can't erase. Doug looked confused. I gestured around us. This land, my history, my father's dock, my footage, my witnesses, and her own signatures on those trust documents. She wants a war of narratives? Fine. But I'm done playing defense. He didn't argue. Just walked back to his car. That night, I dug through old boxes. Found the tape recorder my dad used to carry on fishing trips. Not digital. Analog. Heavy. Real. I replaced the batteries. Slipped in a fresh tape. Then I sat on the porch and started talking. About the land. About my father. About the seasons we spent here. About the moment I knew I had to stop backing down. And the next morning, I made copies. By noon, every local shop, post office, and bar had a small display. The story of Shepherd Lake, a legacy worth defending. Just a cassette, with a note. Play this if you want to know the truth. Karenology. No press, no internet, just voices. Just real people. Listening. By evening, I got the first call. Then the second. Then more. Folks remembered my father. Remembered fishing off the dock. Remembered how the HOA didn't exist back then. How things were quieter. The tide wasn't loud. It wasn't fast, but it was turning. And Karen? She'd built her whole plan on paper. I had something stronger. Memory. I didn't expect the tapes to spread. I thought maybe a few curious locals would pop one into an old truck stereo or dusty cassette player and forget about it 5 minutes later. But by the end of the week, something strange started happening. People came by, Not many, just one or two at a time. A retired teacher. A guy who said he used to fish here as a boy. An old couple in an RV who remembered when my father helped fix the county road after a storm. They didn't ask questions. They just nodded, sat by the dock, left flowers near the old stone fire ring. Then came the letters. Handwritten, folded with care, dropped into my mailbox without names. Notes that said things like, we didn't know the whole story. You're not alone. Keep holding. It didn't change the paperwork. Didn't erase the legal games Karen and her people were still playing. But it shifted something else. Something deeper, the town remembered. And Karen? She hated it. I heard through Doug that she'd hired a PR consultant, started building a website for the trust, crafting a new origin story, philanthropic land reclamation, environmental stewardship, community unity. And then she made her mistake. She hosted a press event. Nothing big, just local news. A tent, balloons, a podium on the gravel turnaround 2 lots down from mine. Banners reading, New Lakeside Future. I watched from the tree line, saw her step up to the mic in a power suit and pearls, speaking about shared vision and responsible development. Then came the final jab. She mentioned my name. Not directly, but enough. A small number of legacy landholders, she said, continue to resist collaboration. But we're confident that, with time and information, we can help them see that the future of this place belongs to everyone. I stepped out from the trees, walked up slowly. All eyes turned. Karen's smile froze. Mind if I speak? I said. She started to object, but the reporter waved her down. Sure, go ahead. I took the mic, looked at the crowd, then down at the podium. This dock behind me, I said, pointing over my shoulder, was built by my father in 1964. He laid every plank with his hands, not for a community, not for a trust, but for his family, for his son. I looked at Karen. Some people think legacy means standing still. But legacy's about memory, about responsibility, about not letting someone else rewrite your story. I held up one of the tapes. You want to know who owns the future of this land? It's not me. It's everyone who remembers where it came from, and everyone willing to protect that. Then I handed the mic back and walked away. They didn't clap, they didn't cheer, but they listened. And later that week, when the environmental audit results were quietly filed, it came with a recommendation that no further development occur within the conservation buffer zone due to potential easement conflicts, which meant the trust couldn't build. Not now, not ever. The land was untouchable. Karen resigned again. This time, for real. Moved out of state, according to Doug. The trust folded within the month. I didn't celebrate. Instead, I rebuilt the fire pit. Stone by stone, just like Dad showed me. And one evening, as the sun dipped low, Bill joined me by the flames with 2 beers and a smirk. You did it, he said. No, I said. I remembered it. That's all. He nodded. And we sat there in the orange glow, the water quiet, the woods alive. The fight finally over. Not with a shout, but with the sound of someone putting something back where it belonged.